So that's really where I lost all my money, was whenever I started trading small caps.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, it wasn't until about, I want to say, mid to late 2017, whenever I actually learned how to not lose money.
Welcome back, everybody, to Be the Trader. Today, I have a very special guest. In fact, I've got quite a few DMs requesting that I bring on this guy onto the show. And so I started watching him, and then over time, we kind of connected via DMs. So today, because of all of you asking and because you've pointed me in the direction of another good trader, I am now bringing on, and I'm happy to bring on Miah Leah, also known on Twitter as Miah Leah as well. Miah Leah, welcome to the show, my man. I'm glad to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. You know, I got a lot of requests for you, and I just love when I hear people say like, this guy's a great trader, he's a good person, and he's just all about giving back. So when I heard that, I was like, okay, let me check this person out. So if you could start off by letting us know, for those who don't really know your background, what got you in the realm of trading to begin with? Like, how did this start?
Okay, so I used to work in sales. I was in the car business, and I've told this story before and different, through messages and all kinds of things. But I used to be in sales. I did it for a long time. I sold cars, and I was in the finance department, and I did that for about 7 years. But while I was selling cars, it was my first year selling cars. It was back in 2012. There was a guy there that he was always on his phone trading, and I had no idea what he was even doing. But we'd be eating lunch, and he's like, "I just made 80 grand," and I'm like, "What? You just made 80 grand? Like, what are you working here for? You know?"
Yeah, I know. I've
Uh,
been the same.
yeah, he'd do it all the time though. He'd make hundreds of thousands every month, and I won't go too much into who he was, but I found out a little background on him. He used to own a hedge fund in Colorado, and he did some illegal things and went to jail. And so when he got out, nobody would hire him. You know, the only place that would hire him was a car dealership. So we just happened to cross paths. So that's how I first started learning about trading, because I'd eat lunch with him. He was real quiet, but I think he just kind of liked me. Just I was the youngest person there. I was 21 at the time, and he said, "Hey, man, you should learn how to trade." He's like, "You can lose all of your money, and you still have the rest of your life to make it back." He's like, "You're young. This is a skill you should learn." And I thought about it, and I thought, you know what? Maybe he's right. I had dropped out of college to go get that job, in sales, because one of my buddies worked there as well, and he was making a killing. So that's what drove me to get into sales. I just wanted to make money. So that's kind of what drew me into trading as well. I was like, man, this guy's making like 80, 100 grand, like random days. And so I opened up an account. I put like 10 grand in it, and just started swing trading large caps. And that's pretty much how I got started. I had no idea what I was doing. Days I would make money, other days I would lose money. I pretty much broke even.
It's
So
wild to me because
yeah.
you said you met this guy, he's working in car sales, but he's saying I'm making 80 grand in a trade or so. He must have, I don't know what, doesn't that, I mean, you scratch your head, like, what's going on? Like, if you're making 80 grand, there's no way you're making more in car sales. Like, there's no way you're making more in a
No,
day. So,
no,
like,
he
what
he'd
was
make
the
like.
solution for that? Like, I'm so confused on why that would even be the case.
So I don't, like I said, I won't go too much into detail about his story, because it's,
Sure.
he keeps kind of private. But what I'll say is, he,
Like,
what
were
he
you
did.
sketchy
And
yourself at first? You know what I'm saying? Were you like, is this guy legit? You know what I'm saying? Because like you just met
oh
this guy.
yeah, yeah. But once I got to know him, and I, talked to him every day, and we worked together for years, I realized this guy is legitimate. And he really knows what he's doing in the market, and he knows how to trade. And so I just kind of picked his brain here and there. And he's a very quiet guy, so he wouldn't give too much details, but he would say, he'd give little hints. He'd be like, "Hey, like, be careful this week, like, it's going to get crazy." And so I'd kind of pull my money out and just sit and wait. And, so he wouldn't really tell me how to trade, or really, you know, um, explain to me really anything. I would just kind of ask some questions and kind of hint at things. So I had
Yeah.
to learn all on my own. But that's how I got started. Really, it was from him, just watching him trade from his phone. He traded options. So he'd trade from his phone and we'd be eating lunch and he'd jump up and he's like, yeah, I just made 200 grand. And I'm just like, what? Like,
Yeah.
but he had to work there though. So, he based on, how he got in trouble and whenever he got out of jail or prison, he had to have a job. So that's the only reason he was really there.
Hmm.
So,
Okay, cool. That's enough about him. So that's, I appreciate you saying that because it was very odd, and I'm sure
yeah, it's
people
very
are listening,
strange.
they'll be like, what? Okay. So I appreciate
Yeah.
that. Now I'm curious. So when you got started
Mhm.
and you started first off with swing trading,
Yeah.
what was for you? How long did it take you to finally find your own like niche, if you will? And then how long did it take? And then once you found it, how long did it take you to kind of develop it to be consistent?
Oh, that's a good question. So, I started like late 2012, early 2013. And I didn't make any money. I actually lost money for about 3.5 years. And then I want to say late, probably 2017 is whenever I started to not lose money, but just break even. I could
Yep.
trade for the full year, and instead of being red, I was maybe like small green or
Yep.
or break even. I wasn't. I just basically learned how to not lose money. You know.
Yes.
So it took about 3.5 years to even get to that point. Keep in mind, I was also working a full-time job, so I only traded the mornings.
Hmm.
I only traded the first like 30, 45 minutes, and then I'd go to work,
So
and
you
then I'd
weren't
just
swing
kind of.
trading, were you? Or were you swing trading?
I was at that time,
Okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
And I did pick up a little bit on small caps during that time too, and that's really where I lost all the money because I was getting into a lot of these OTC pump and dumps, and I had no idea what they were at the time. I'm just watching them go up, and I'm buying them, and then I'm swinging them right long,
Yeah.
and then days later it's down 80%, and, and then
Oh my God, those were
and I'm like,
miserable. Yeah.
oh, that feels great. So that's really where I lost all my money was whenever I started trading small caps.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, it wasn't until about, I want to say mid to late 2017, whenever I actually learned how to not lose money. So I kind of found a little system that I could, you know, um, make money at, but I didn't really learn how to, maximize what I was doing. So it took, I want to say like another year after that to where I was, actually profitable and bringing in cash, consistently.
Nice,
So,
man. And I love
so it
that you
took a little
pointed
while.
out. I love that you point out this, that it took you time first to learn not to lose, right? Like learn,
Oh,
like
for sure.
basically what you're saying for everyone who's listening is like you got to go through a whole entire stage of learning all of these lessons. And the more
Hmm.
hard-headed you are, at least I'm very hard-headed. It took me a long time. I lost constantly to where you start to be like, oh, that's a lesson. I need to get rid of that. And then you get rid of that. So it seemed
Yeah.
like you started eliminating your less or your losers or in terms of mistakes, and then started to hone in and you found something that worked. And even though it worked, you weren't making money, but you were at least breaking even or barely green or slightly red. But at the end of the day, you stopped going down, which is
Yep.
really interesting because people are probably where you were back in the day. They're probably there right now, and they're probably still feeling discouraged, right? They're probably still feeling like, oh, I've been working on this for 3 years, 5 years, and I'm not making any money. Well, just listen up right now to Miah because it's definitely showing you that after you get to that point of like consolidation, it's just like a chart. When you're consolidating
Yep.
your learning curve. Now what you worked on, Miah, is what you told me is how to really take advantage of that strategy, that setup, whatever it is that
Hmm.
made you successful, and really expand on it. Like, how can I grow this strategy to make more money? Because it seems like, and now I'll let you continue, but I really want people to hear that, what you just said, rewind and listen to that, because I'm assuming now, like you were saying, you just went ahead and said, okay, I know what I need to do, and now I just need to like chisel out the sculpture to really make it beautiful, right? To
Hmm.
chisel out my entry, chisel out my exit, chisel out, how, when is a warning sign telling me to get out? So Can you explain that process, like that next year and how you figured that
Yeah,
out?
you said one word that kind of sums it all up. You said how to eliminate. And that's really what I focus on more than anything in my trading. I still do it today because everyone wants to learn how to, maximize their winners, right? And I feel like I don't think it's important to learn how to maximize your winners. People would probably argue that. But I think that maximizing your winners comes over time, just kind of like you're learning how to trade. It's like you're learning how to trade, you just get better over time. So instead of trying to force that and, maximize your winners and have these big gains, I feel like it's more important to focus on the mistakes and slowly eliminate the mistakes out of your trading. The less and less mistakes that you can make, the better it is for you. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I have a pretty high win percent or win rate. It's because I don't really make many mistakes, and the mistakes that I do make, they're not detrimental to me. I just keep them as small as possible. Every once in a while, I'll get a misread, and I might load into a position, because it's got very high odds that the trade will work, and I'm wrong, and I take a little bit bigger loss than anticipated. But that's trading. That's just how it works sometimes. But I'm never putting myself in a position to where it's going to be detrimental to me or my account. So eliminating the mistakes is, I think, the most important, and that's what I focus on now. Especially as the market shifts too. Market shifts, plays change. Things aren't working the same. Maybe they, are running more or dropping more than what they used to. So
Yep.
you kind of have to, adjust and learn how to, make less and less mistakes. That's really what I focus on, as opposed to, maximizing, gains.
So that's the true focus on after that next year to get your profits. Is that what you
Yep.
focus on then?
Yep.
Okay.
Just eliminating mistakes. Yep.
What were like some of the key mistakes that point out to you right now that take you back to memory lane? Like, oh, like that was just a dreadful mistake I used to make, and now I don't make it anymore. What were those couple of mistakes that helped you really grow?
I think probably the biggest one was not recognizing, like the good setups from the bad setups, and not necessarily the setup itself, but what's happening in the setup at that time. For instance, one of my rules is I don't trade consolidation. It took me a while to get to that point to where I decided, what, I should not be trading consolidation. Like I constantly lose money. So but whenever you're in the moment and you're watching the stocks, and sometimes you get honed in on these little micro moves as opposed to, paying attention to the bigger picture, you can chop yourself up. So one of the things that really changed in my trading or made it a lot easier for me is whenever I stopped trading consolidation. Maybe a stock makes a huge move and you're like, hey, this is going to be a great play, but then it starts consolidating, right? And maybe you're in position at that time and you're thinking it's not working the way it should, I should just get out, instead of trying to, trade it. And then maybe you switch biases and get chopped up a different direction. And next thing you know, it's consolidated for 2 hours and you just lost, X amount of money, whenever you could have just recognized it at first, got out, and then saved yourself, the headache, the loss, mental capital, all that stuff.
It's I like that you, first off, is this still in the context of swing trading? Still, like, when you say swing trading,
I don't trade. I don't swing at all anymore.
Okay.
I stopped swinging probably back in 2016.
Okay.
So yeah, just intraday.
Really?
I haven't swung a position.
So how? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think I've swung maybe 3 positions a year for like the past 3 years.
Okay.
So maybe like three like trades a year. So I rarely ever swing anymore.
So I'm interested in this then, because at first I thought it was more of you were doing better as a swing trader, and then when you started dipping into penny stocks, things were not going too hot. That's where your losses came from. So
yes, that's very, yeah.
What made you then switch to small caps?
When I made that transition, was mainly just because the volatility. I love volatility. I think I make the most money and I feel the most comfortable whenever you have the biggest moves in the shortest amount of time. So that's really what I like to play. That's really what I feel comfortable trading, and that's where I get the best reads. I can read tape much easier whenever it's high volume, high volatility. big range as opposed to, like what we've seen like the past couple months where you get these stocks that grind for 3 hours and only move $2, I just won't even trade them. It's just not even worth my time. So,
So are
yeah,
you a very short term like scalp or momentum player, or like give
I
me an
would say
idea?
more, I'm a little mix of both momentum and scalp.
Okay.
It depends on the setup because, if the setup is right, I'm holding my position for a much bigger move. If I know that it's, that's all the move is going to give me, then yeah, I'm just going to be scalping it. Yeah.
So it's interesting because you said something earlier too about, if the big picture matters to you, right?
Oh,
And,
for sure.
and
Yeah.
so like, is that big picture, what do you look for to determine, oh, this is a scout play and this is a bigger picture move where I can, hold for more momentum kind of play?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it really all comes down to price action, but really what I'm looking for on the big picture is extension, whether that's to the upside or the downside. I want to see exhaustion. I want to see a stock either run really big and get to the point where it just can't move anymore, no matter how many times it tries, or the opposite way, where it's dumping out to the point where it can't dump anymore. There's no more sellers.
Mm.
So yeah, I want to see extension, and I want to see the stock get exhausted to the point where it can't move anymore. So
So after that, so it seems like you wait for confirmation then, right? Like it
for
sounds
sure,
like you wait for those things to happen before you really attack it.
definitely,
I guess
yeah.
sometimes we all may play like parts of that, but like your
Hmm.
main wait is waiting for that exhaustion or waiting for that death, that big drop or whatever it
Yeah.
may be. Okay, that's interesting. So, and that makes sense because now you have a lot for everyone who's listening. What does that really look like? As he mentioned, it's like a stock. Maybe it could mean many things, but it could be intraday, it could be daily, but a stock that
Hmm.
just ran from like
Exactly.
$1 to $5, right? And then all of
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
sudden,
You're right.
a huge crack. With what
Hmm.
you're saying is you're waiting for the opportunity where who's screwed, right? Who's screwed right now?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whoever's screwed, I want to play against that person.
Pretty
Which is
much.
awesome.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
So, but you brought up a good point though. Like, what does that mean, intraday or daily? That I think that's all determined by the price action of how the stock is trading. So, if like there's a stock that runs, 3, 4, or 5 days in a row, and sure, it's volatile, but it hasn't really gotten exhausted yet. You
Mm.
kind of have to wait for those moments. But if it's intraday, like say if there's a stock that just starts running midday and on no news, and it's moving pretty quickly. I'm looking at key points on the daily chart, support and resistance areas to where, I'm going to wait for it to get to that area and test it first before, I can see, hey, is this going to go higher or is this going to go lower? Depending on, what that price action is. So extension and exhaustion, yeah, it depends on the price action of what's going on. Yeah,
I appreciate you
but
putting that into
that's a good point.
context because that's something that really helps. And when you hear him say that, you're basically hearing it's not as simple as it seems, right? It's not just
Yep.
overextension, overexhaustion. It's like it's all in context of the big picture, the intraday, everything put
Mhm.
together. What is it telling you? And that's something that's very important because a lot of people will hear us say one thing and be like, oh, let me go run with that idea and just do that. And then they'll be like,
Yeah.
Alex and Miah are idiots. So
Yeah,
no, but
exactly.
now I want to know something about whenever you started to focus on more momentum
Hmm.
and we'll just call it momentum trading. When
Hmm.
you focused on that, what was the hardest thing for you to really get across your head to help you, yeah, kind of make that jump to like more consistency and making money?
Hmm. That's a good question. I'd have to say just trading small size really helped because, I would keep myself from putting myself into a bad position early on. It was more like um, I was kind of testing the waters, but I think what really kind of changed all of that was whenever I started tracking data.
Hmm.
Yeah. Whenever I actually saw, the odds of, X play working, you know. So once ever I gathered enough data on certain setups that I like to play, then it was more like I could be more patient for the right entries because I knew that getting in here has like roughly a 60% chance of, success. But waiting for this area, even if it never gets there, I would rather just wait for that area because I have 80-90% chance that it's going to work. So it either gets to that area and I trade it, or there's just no trade. So
Would you
I like
could
to stick to like about a 70% win ratio or higher. So I usually don't want to take a trade unless I have a 70% win ratio or higher on that setup. Yeah.
So that makes me think, if you're that picky in terms of high win rate, it's making me think of maybe, and I could be completely wrong here, so I'm asking, are you more of a very specific kind of sniper kind of mentality where sometimes you might place one trade in a day, maybe none, or is it more of, I do place multiple trades in one day, but there is patterns out there that make me 70% win rate that are every day for me?
That's a good question. Yeah, I do. I mean, in this market, especially in the past year, I'm making probably 20 trades a day. And yeah, they do have all that high win rate percentages. But say like 2018, 2019, yeah, maybe I'd only place like just a couple trades in a day because I was just patient and waiting. But with the market that we have right now, we're getting those plays all the time, whether it's small caps, mid caps, large caps. The plays are there, the setups are there. You just have to, be patient, wait for them. And when they happen, yeah, take them. But they're happening a lot right now. They're happening all the time. So let's just say on Friday, I placed about 24, 25 trades, something like that.
All in
Yeah.
the morning? Like you're done by the morning, or are you all day kind of?
Yeah. Yeah. I'd probably say 90 to 95% of my money is made within the first like 2 hours. And
Nice.
then I'll maybe scalp a couple plays, just for, a little money here and there after
Just to
that.
scratch that itch.
So yeah. Well, so what I like to do is this, I have a stand desk behind me. I like to stand in the morning, and, so I'm on point, I can think clearly. And so I'm standing for the first couple hours. And then whenever I bring it down and I'm sitting down, then it's kind of like, okay, I'm in scout mode. Like if there's a play, I'll take it, but I'm not going to trade big size because I'm going to protect my morning gains. Right. And
Yeah.
then after that, if there's any play, it's very rare that I'll trade in the afternoon. I don't like to, just because the odds of the trade working on the setups that I like to play have drastically decreased. So it's the stock has to have, some crazy move to get me interested to, trade afternoons.
I love that you said something that you need to understand what he just said. He said whenever his bread and butter is made in the first, hour or two, right? And then you
Mhm.
said that when you do trade after that, you downsize to protect your gains
Drastically. Yeah.
and obviously because you know that the odds are not as high, right?
Hmm.
And so that's very smart. And that's the whole thing about risk management, how risk management isn't as simple as 3-1 only, right? It's a lot of
Sure.
things involved with risk management. So I love that you just shared that because that's just how you're managing your risk, where you cut down your size in midday. And then if in the afternoon, it's like you try not to trade at all, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You,
Try and minimize risk as much as possible. So in the mornings, I'm either green or red. I'm usually green. I only have like 3 red days a month usually. So if those trades didn't work, well then, yeah, I'm not going to fight to try and get those gains back throughout the day. It's just the plays aren't there, the odds aren't there. So just
you know
happen to be
what's
a red day.
what kind of stands out right now is when you just said, I'm 3 red days in a month. What's interesting is I think because you're placing so many trades in a day right now,
Hmm.
the diversification, I think works in your favor, right? Like, because you have these high odd plays, and if you're placing 20 trades, then the odds are even higher that you're going to end up having a really good day. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. Yeah. And the majority of those trades, I'm trading not that big a size. And to me, it's not that big a size. To other people, it
Understand.
probably would be, but I'd say to most traders, it would be bigger size. But to me, it's not really that big of size. Maybe 1 or 2 trades on out of those 24 or 25 that I put in the day, I'm actually putting size on. So the majority of them are going to be about half size or smaller. And then once the morning ends, then I'm really small.
I love that you
So
said that. Go
yeah,
ahead.
I'll just give you an example. So like in the morning at the open, let's say I have like an A plus setup, right? Um, you know, if I know that the odds are like 70%, then maybe I'm going in 20, 30,000 shares. I won't go, I mean, I'll go a lot bigger than that sometimes, but it's got to be a really good setup. So, maybe I'm only placing one or two trades with like 20,000 shares, right? And then the majority of them after that are going to be 5,000 or less. And then in the afternoon, maybe I'm only trading, or not the afternoon, but after the morning, maybe I'm only trading like 1,000 shares, on a position. So,
I'm glad you
yeah.
shared that because that's going to help me out too. And the reason I say that is because I went from trading maybe one setup a day,
Hmm.
maybe three a week, to now I'm
Hmm.
placing minimum 5, 6 in a day. So like,
Hmm.
it's interesting because I'll get upset with myself sometimes in the past where I'd be like, you know what? I only got half size on 3 of these. And then, but it's because it didn't make sense. Like it didn't make sense. But then after the end of the day, you know how you're reviewing your trades and you're
Of
like,
course.
if I would have went full size there,
Yeah.
so during that moment, it didn't make sense. So what you're basically saying is like, it's not every day all the trades are going to make sense where you got to put all your size
No,
in. Some are half, some are a
there's
quarter.
days that I
Depends
don't.
on the
There's days
odds,
that I
right?
don't even trade size, but I'll still make, roughly the same amount just because, you know, um, it, I'm patient. I'm hitting the right areas. I'm taking the money where I should. I'm not overstaying. I'm doing the right moves. In order for me to take size, it's got to be really good. I have to be very confident in the trade. So, yeah.
That gets me a question. How hard was it for you? Because I get this question a lot. They're like, Alex, I know where I need to enter,
Hmm.
whether it's long or short. I know where I need to enter. If it's short, it's usually, when it doesn't look like you should enter, right?
Hmm.
And then when it's long, it's like where you think you should
Of
enter. But
course.
it's those key areas. How was that ever a challenge for you? And if it was, what helped you overcome that challenge?
That's a great question. And I would have to say, no, it was not a challenge for me. Because one thing that I've noticed about my trading over the years is I don't really get emotional. I keep the emotions to the side. It's very rare that I do. The only time I've ever really gotten emotional are the times that I have like a bigger loss, and it's just like, it's almost like I'm in denial that the stock is, or the trade is not working because I know how good the setup is. Right. And so I'm like getting in with size and I'm thinking, this should work. This is going to work. And then it doesn't. And I'm thinking, why isn't this working? Right.
Yeah.
And it's almost like I'm in denial about it. So that's really the only times I've ever gotten emotional in a trade. So to answer your question, I would say, no, it's not. But one thing that I have noticed over the years is the most money is made whenever others are getting emotional. So whenever you get in those moments where you see, like, say you mentioned like a short, like it looks like it's not a short, right? Well, at that time you're freaking out. It's like most people are freaking out. They're there's no way I would short this, right? But that's actually probably the best entry. So that's something that I didn't really struggle with because I thought if everyone else is freaking out, like I'm gonna get in, and I'm gonna nail this trade. I'm not gonna go into size. I'm gonna protect myself, of course. But yeah, I don't think that was ever a struggle with me because I think that the most money made in the market or the best entries is whenever everyone else is getting emotional. So you just keep your emotions aside and wait for everyone else to freak out. Wait for
Yes.
everyone else to panic.
I
And
love
then
that you
you
said
can,
that.
take that trade. Yeah.
I agree with you, man. I think that was a challenge for me for a long time. Like, it's like whenever I got stopped out is when I should have been short. You know what I'm saying? Like, so
Yeah.
it's when I learned that lesson, I was like, I'm just not shorting until that's where I think I should be stopped. Now I'm shorting. So I love that you said that
But
because
stopping out isn't a bad thing,
no,
You're
yeah,
protecting yourself, because what if it didn't? What if it didn't say, turn direction or trend change, and
true.
now you're holding it and now you have a much bigger loss instead of cutting it. So
Now we have a bigger problem, buddy. Now you're probably going to blow up your account.
yeah, yeah.
Let me ask you this, and before we start to wrap this thing up, my man, what is something that you believe a lot of traders, maybe I'm sure traders ask you questions all the time. So what's a question that you get asked that traders believe like, oh, if you help me with this one answer, I know I'll be profitable, but it's not really true. Like they just have that perception. What is that you feel like think is the right answer to go for to be successful, but really isn't?
Hmm. That's kind of a tough one to answer. I get a lot of questions where they're very broad, Like it's hard to answer them because, they're asking like, hey, what do you look for whenever you're like gonna take a short? And it's like, well, I need to write like, a book or something,
Yeah.
to answer that question. Like it's way too broad of a question to really break down. I did a webinar not too long ago, probably about, I want to say 6 months ago. And I really broke down on what I do, and it took 2 hours, to do that webinar, and that's really only like the basics. That's not even really getting into the nitty gritty of, even like tape reading and stuff like that. But I would say that, to answer your question, I would say that people think, tape reading is, like that's probably the most common question that I get. They're like, what do you look for on the tape? To get in, are you looking for like a series of, red prints, or are you looking for, a big order to pop up? And it's like, well, no, it's not that easy. You have to understand like order flow, price action, like where the big money is flowing, and kind of understand what they're trying to do with that move, when to be patient. Are they going to keep running this or not? You just have to gauge where the actual money is flowing. And that it's such a hard thing to answer when people ask that. It's not one thing,
That's
I
right.
could list, 1,000 things of, what I look for really,
I
so.
think I think people ask those questions because I think it's the way trading's marketed to people in advertisement, they make it seem so simple, right?
Yeah.
And because of that, we think it, at least, as a new trader, you're like, oh, it is simple, but it's simple concepts that are really deep,
Yeah.
is really what it is. And I mean, I made a level 2 video not too long ago. If you're interested in watch that, if
Yeah.
you're listening to Miah and it's like, what's level 2? Go check that out. I try to dumb it down quick and easy to understand. But one of the biggest things, my mistake was when I first discovered level 2 a long time ago, is I thought it was like that, like you said, like people think it's the be all kind of indicator. And at the end of the day,
Yeah.
it's not. And it's like, it's also important. Where do you use it is very important. Not like
Hmm.
everywhere in the chart, it's certain places on a chart matter more than others. So I
For
appreciate
sure.
you saying that, man. And before we start to wrap this up, would you like to tell everyone where can they find out more about you if they have questions? If they're like, you know what, man, I love this guy. I want to know more about him and ask him a certain question. How can they find you, my man?
Well, I'm not really, you know, a on any place. The only place that I really post or talk is on Twitter. But I did turn off my DMs on Twitter because I was getting, 20, 30 a day, and it was getting a little too overwhelming. And a lot of them were the same questions. So I was kind of copy pasting, and then I realized, I'm taking up like 2, 3 hours of my day outside, and I have all these other things I need to do. So um, that's kind of hard. I don't mind people like just shooting me a message on Twitter,
Yeah.
right? Just tweeting and then like, tagging me in it. I'll answer those questions and stuff. But DMs, it got a little too overwhelming. So
Hey,
it
no
was too
worries.
much.
No worries.
Yeah, life outside of trading is just as important as paying attention to trading. So I take that very seriously.
Are you
So
married?
no, I'm not.
When you're
No,
married, it'll be
single
even more
guy.
serious. It's like,
Yeah, exactly, man.
she's probably about to walk in
Yeah.
here and be like, you still on freaking interviews?
Yeah. Yeah. This is your day off. Yeah. That's
This
what
is
I mean,
MLK
man.
Day. The market's closed. What are you doing?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
would say if they want to follow me, go on Twitter. You can look at me, and I post my charts. I haven't been doing it recently. I'm trying to keep away from social media as much as possible. But if you tweet and you tag me in it and you have a question, I'll answer it. So
Cool. I appreciate that, my man. Well, look, man, I appreciate you being here today, answering some questions. And matter of fact, it's just been a pleasure to have you on the show, man. Thanks so much.
yeah, Alex, you're awesome, man. I appreciate it.